Good morning. Today's lead story in the New York Times is about the president's son blurring the lines in his Serbia visit. You may recall that a few years ago, Donald Trump Sr. was really frustrated with Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, for trying to do some business in Ukraine and possibly China and trading on his father's name. There's a famous example where he said, the big guy is sitting here right with me, when he was trying to get some contracts for his firm. The Trump folks were outraged, evidently corrupt behavior. But what's really fascinating is that over the last few days, Donald Trump's oldest son, Don Jr., went to Serbia, and he spent some time there with the president of Serbia, Alexander Vučić. Mr. Vučić is in some trouble in Serbia. There's some concern about institutional corruption, and recently there was a sort of rail bridge collapse that killed 15 people and has triggered huge protests in the streets. Donald Trump's also very popular in Serbia, whereas we know they like a strong leader. Trump's son's visit to see Mr. Vučić evidently paused some of the protesting and kind of propped up the president there. What's potentially really interesting is that Vučić also, a couple of years ago, signed over a big building in Belgrade to the Trump Hotel Organization. So he said, basically, you can have this Ministry of Defense building and turning it into a hotel. So the Trump Hotel Organization wants to turn the old Ministry of Defense in Belgrade into a 175-room luxury hotel. Obviously, that's a huge conflict of interest for the president's business to be trading with the president of another country on a building that has huge value. Opposition in Serbia has been outspoken to that trade. They said, can you imagine in the US turning over the West Point Academy to be turned into a hotel? Obviously, you can't imagine that because it wouldn't happen. The story continues on page 7, and where it gets very interesting is they've gone and spoken to an ethicist. Now, the ethicist actually actively brings up the comparison to Hunter Biden. She says this is a little bit like Hunter Biden doing it. She says it's the height of hypocrisy that they were concerned about Hunter Biden's foreign work, and when the conflict of interest in this case is far more explicit. Don Jr. is a surrogate for his father, is using the public office as the president of the United States to help the president of Serbia stay in office while furthering the Trump family's personal financial interests. She said, it's unethical, it is offensive. That is a very brave and outspoken person called Virginia Cantor. She used to work for the International Monetary Fund. She now works for a non-profit group called State Democracy Defenders that's been critical of Mr. Trump. I'm sure that Mr. Trump's people will read that story today and try and figure out a way that they can reduce Ms. Cantor's federal grant money or scare some of her donors into making her less outspoken. But she's said it pretty clearly, and good for her. It's interesting, as I read that quote, I was really struck by how outspoken it is for a chief executive of a non-profit lately. Many non-profit chief executives have become fairly scared of saying anything publicly just because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to see their funding cut. So there's Donald Trump Jr. in Serbia, and there is Mr. Pascal. What's his name? This guy's name, Brad Pascale. He's a former campaign manager for President Trump. Doesn't he look like a psycho? Anyway, he's the guy who paid for it. So that's the news today. Donald Trump's corrupt. What? Who knew? Thanks for reading the newspaper with me so that you don't have to read the news. It's a pleasure. Please talk about this with your friends and family, and let's all get media literate, shall we? Appreciate you.